Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do a tag. I was actually tagged by Adrian over at Stripped Cover Lit to do the Authortube in the Trenches tag. So this is a collection of 10 questions that just have to do with writing and being an author. And I don't get tagged in things very often, or at least not in video tags, so I'm kind of excited to do this one. And so I'm just going to start with the questions right away without further ado. I have them on my phone here. Question 1. Do you have a sweetheart novel / short story / poetry project? A project that turned you into a serious writer? I think I have two. There's two that come to mind anyway. The first one was a series of, I guess, short stories. I think they were short story length rather than novella. I know I've talked about this series before in one of my previous videos, but I think I ended up calling this series Feathered Ends or something like that. There's basically a collection of short stories that was very similar to the Saddle Club in the sense that it was a group of girls who ride horses and have all kinds of misadventures. It definitely wasn't the first thing I wrote by any means, but it was one of the first series or projects that I actually consistently started and completed each story. And I think it ended up being probably like 8 or 10 short stories in the series before I just kind of got tired of it or ran out of ideas. And I know I was in probably like 2nd or 3rd grade when I started the series, so that was the one where I really felt like I could be a serious enough writer to see something through from start to finish, because as many of you can probably sympathize, a lot of writers start projects and don't finish them, and I am notorious for that. I have considerably more half-finished projects than I have actually finished ones. The second project was going to be a novel that I haven't finished yet, and there's a reason for that. It's a novel that I started when I was, I believe, a freshman, maybe a sophomore in college, so around like 19-ish. I started this story based on a prompt in one of my writing classes. This story I felt like was the first book that I thought I would be able to see all the way through to publication. And I would still like to finish this story someday, but the reason I didn't is because I suppose the genre fits more into the new adult or adult category, and as someone who was 19 years old and the majority of my characters were in their mid-20s to early 30s, going through experiences that I hadn't experienced, I realized that I didn't really have enough life experience to properly see the project through to the end. Someday I would like to go back and finish it and maybe publish it, but until then, I'm not going to worry about it. Okay, question 2. Do you ever plan to work on a series-length project? I'm doing that right now. The Blood of Fire series is planned to be 3 books as of right now, and I do have some ideas for a 4th sort of companion novel, which might just be a collection of short stories told from different characters' perspectives, but right now it's going to be a trilogy. Blood of Fire is obviously published and has been published since 2018. Trail of Flames, I'm currently still working on editing, and the 3rd book in the series is in the very first, very early drafts. I really enjoy writing series, whatever. But the thing about writing a series is it really does take a lot out of you. Writing a novel in general is a marathon, it's not a sprint, and so writing a series is kind of like a triathlon. It takes a lot of time and dedication and consistency and making sure things add up across the entire series, and there is definitely a lot of pressure to make each book in some way better or as good as the previous books. So once I'm done with this series and have everything published, who fucking knows when that's going to be, I think the next project I'll work on will be a standalone, just to kind of give myself a break, and I do have some ideas for that, so not giving away anything right now. That's just what I'm going to say. Question 3. Thoughts on mixed form projects, such as short stories that contain poems, novels that contain short stories, etc. I think they're kind of cool. I don't think I've read a lot of books that contain like a short story or poems within them. There has been the off novel that has maybe like a song or a poem in it, and I don't know, I think it's kind of cool to add this extra little tidbit, especially if it's written from a character's perspective. I don't have anything against them. I don't think I could ever write them myself because that would require me to be good at poetry or short stories or music, and I'm not. I can kind of write short stories, but I much prefer novels because I just have a lot to say, ideally in the written word. Despite having a YouTube channel, I'm really not big on talking. But I'm not good at poetry, and I can't write songs, so I don't think I would ever really apply it in my own work, but I like seeing it in other works. Question 4, where do you picture publishing in 10 years? Having no real professional insight into the industry as a whole. I'm only an indie author. Fuck that, I'm an indie author. Anyway, I don't really know how to forecast stuff that will happen, but I really do think that indie publishing will become much more popular. I think years ago it was probably not popular whatsoever, and I'm sure when it first came out, it was like if you self-published something, it was probably very small and probably didn't get as far as it does now. I'd like to think that self-publishing will become even less stigmatized. I guess you could say it's a little bit stigmatized because there still is this kind of idea that self-published work isn't necessarily as good as traditionally published work, which is sometimes true, but sometimes bullshit. We've all read plenty of traditionally published books that suck. I've read plenty of indie books that are significantly better than traditionally published books, and I've also read indie books that I'm like, you jumped the gun, my friend. No, this is just not quality work. And as someone with a sort of a love-hate relationship with technology, I do see maybe technology taking more of the forefront, I guess you could say. We've already seen stores like Borders closing down, and maybe Barnes & Noble is seeing some of that. I wouldn't be surprised, to be 100% honest, if Barnes & Noble did eventually get shut down because all of these internet and electronic services are becoming much more prevalent, which is kind of sad to me because most of the people I know, including myself, prefer having books in their hand, and it's hard because a lot of people do consume things via technology more often, or even purchase paperback or hardcover books through online rather than going into a bookstore. I'd like to think that publishing, especially for indie authors, will be more accessible, but I do see, unfortunately, technology kind of taking over the old school ways. And I say unfortunately because I'm just kind of like an old-fashioned minded person. And actually, now that I think about it, Adrian did say something in his story, in his video, about how he compared indie authors sort of to like the minor league baseball, where he thinks that more self-published authors will be picked up by maybe well-known publishing houses, and I could see that too. Like, I agree with him on that. And I think that could be a good thing, because then, again, it would sort of be taking away that stigma that self-published books are all crap, but then you're also kind of giving away the rights to your work. You're giving it away to a big company that essentially can do whatever they want with it. But I'm not gonna sit here and like bash traditional publishing houses at all, because someday I might try to become traditionally published as well. Alright, moving on. 5. If you could have one booktuber review your work, who would it be? I think I'd like Jesse the Reader to review my book. He's just so high energy and funny and just like, kind of all over the place with his... That's just how he like presents himself in most of his videos, and his videos always make me laugh, and I feel like he's the kind of person who's nice enough that if he didn't like it, he wouldn't be a complete asshole. I think he would be very realistic in his critique. Like, I think he would try to highlight as many positive things as negative and not just shit all over it, and maybe if he didn't like it, he wouldn't review it at all, but yeah, I would say Jesse the Reader because I really like his style. 6. Writers' quarrels are things of legend. What author alive today would you want to spat? Alright. Like, I'm not mad about this question for existing, but just thinking about this kind of like riles me up for some reason. I don't fucking want to fight with anyone about anything. When it comes right down to it, I'm a very non-confrontational person. I don't like getting in arguments, especially about frivolous shit, and despite the fact that I have very strong opinions about something that I'll have an opinion on, I feel like I could definitely stand up for myself if some sort of spat were to occur, but I would never go out of my way to argue or fight with someone about anything. I don't start fights or arguments or anything like that. I don't see any reason why I would need to argue with another author about anything, because life is stressful and combative enough as it is, so I wouldn't want to argue with people about anything. There's just so many arguments and bullshit and people getting like upset over nothing these days that I just don't want any part of it. And I also feel like it's unrealistic that I would argue with another author about something. I think it would be more realistic for me to argue with a reader of my book who didn't like it. Of course, the more popular a book gets, the more likely you're going to have bad reviews. And none of the reviews that I have so far are really horrible reviews. But I've definitely disagreed with people on their opinion of my book. So I could easily see myself arguing with someone who maybe gave my book like 1 star and had all these like shitty things to say about it that weren't called for. Because some people do that. Some people will just bash and do rant reviews just for the sake of it or for the sake of being angry or because they completely missed the ball. I could see that happening, but I have no interest in arguing with anyone about anything. Life's too short for that shit. I'm stressed out enough as it is. I don't need that. Keep it off my wave. Don't come over here. It's on my gate. Save it, just keep it off my wave. I'm gonna have that stuck in my head. Number 7, have you ever been part of a writer's group? Yeah, I've been part of... Oh my god, my hair's stuck. Long hair problems. I've been part of in-person writing groups and plenty of online writing groups. I would recommend them even for someone who is like me and very introverted and likes to keep to themselves and doesn't really leave the house too often. It definitely helps to have comrades within the writing community and other writers and authors to bounce ideas off of, or to give each other feedback, or to talk about publishing, and maybe, you know, they'll learn stuff from you and you'll learn stuff from them. I think I just prefer online writing groups because I don't have to be expected to go places at a certain time, because my schedule is just crazy busy as it is. So anytime that I have gone to writers groups in person, I find that it's like ridiculously late at night by the time I get home and just not really worth it for me personally. But I do enjoy the online writing groups that I'm in. Most of them are on Facebook, so I'm not a fan of Facebook that much when it comes to social media platforms that I use, but I really do like Facebook groups. So yeah, I am in writing groups and I usually like it and find it useful for the most part. 8. Do you have a favorite writer's craft book? This question was really difficult for me because I don't really read a lot of craft books. I don't like being told how to write. I don't like being told what to do. And I don't like telling other people how to write or what to do, which is the reason why I don't film a lot of how to do this kind of stuff anymore. Any writing craft books I've read were probably in college, but I've been out of college for several years now, so I don't remember any of them. The ones that I have right now, I guess this is the most well-known one I have. I have Stephen King's On Writing. I haven't read it just yet, but I think I will like it because from what I understand, it's not just a how-to manual for writing, it's also a memoir, so I think I'll find it useful to learn about writing based on his experiences and the things that he talks about that happen in his life, which is kind of how I want to approach my channel more. I don't want to tell people this is how you do this. I would rather say this is how I did it, take it or leave it, use my experience to help you, and go about it like that. But yeah, I can't really recommend any craft books off the top of my head because I don't really read them. I will recommend this book. It's not a craft book. It doesn't tell you how to write. It's called The Pocket Muse, Ideas and Inspirations for Writing by Monica Wood. I'm sure there's different versions of it out by now because I got this several years ago. It's literally just a book of inspirational things. There's some writing prompts in it. There's some pictures, so you can just like flip to a random page and just write about whatever is written there. But as far as craft books go, that's not really technically one, but it is good for inspiration. So that's how I'll answer that question because that was kind of like a half-assed answer. I did my best. 9. Do you have a least favorite writer's craft book? And again, this was hard to answer because I haven't read a lot of craft books that I remember, but I did find one. And this book isn't necessarily just for writers. It's meant for artistic, creative people of any sort of genre. And I know there's going to be some people who are going to get mad at me for this because I think this is a pretty popular book, but it is The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I have given this book at least 2 opportunities, and this is how far I've gotten, because it's very difficult for me to really get into it for a couple reasons. The first one is that she refers to creativity or like your muse as God. I'm assuming she's like a Christian person, and that's fine. I got nothing against Christians or religion, but as someone who's not religious at all, it's very off-putting when someone wants to refer to creativity, which to me is more of like a feeling or an ability, as God. So I found that incredibly distracting, and it just really took me out of the book because sometimes I didn't quite understand what she was saying, and I don't have any like exact quotes, I think, but she really just uses God and spirituality a little bit too much. I mean, it does say a spiritual path to higher creativity, but it didn't feel spiritual to me. It felt more religious, and so it took me a really long time to even get as far as I did. I will continue reading it at some point, but I've just been kind of like, I don't want to. And the other reason is because it's one of those craft books that does give you a lot of homework, as in, I think it has like the daily writing pages where it's like, write a whole page of just whatever, just like stream of consciousness. And for me, it was really hard to do that. And the way it was presented was like, you need to do this every day in order to gain more creativity or something like that. And I don't fucking like homework. Like I said, I graduated college years ago. I have plenty of my own work to do on and off the clock, so I don't need more homework. The one thing I did like was there's a lot of quotes in the margins that I like, but out of all the books that I've read about craft or creativity, I would say this one has been really freaking difficult to deal with just because it just put me off in a lot of ways, but I'm sure I'll give it a third chance at some point because I'm running out of books on my bookshelf that I have not read yet. Alright, and number 10 is to tag people. So, I'm not good at tagging people by name. You may have noticed this. So, if you're watching and you're a writer/author and you think these questions are interesting, then go ahead and do the tag. I'm going to list all the questions below in the description, as well as a link to Stripped Cover Lit's channel. Couldn't think of the word. If you'd like to keep up with me on my writing endeavors, I'll also link my social media in the description as always. And if you'd like to check out my debut novel, Blood of Fire, I'll also link that below in the description. Thank you very much for the guys over at Stripped Cover Lit for always coming up with new tags. I just really like doing tags because I feel like they're pretty easy to film. And thank you very much for tagging me if I didn't say that already. So until next time, see ya! 5 minutes to do a thumbnail. What should I do in my thumbnail? How does this look? I almost bit this, but I found this on the ground. Look. Alright, I'm done.